If we talk a bit about Koi, I feel like actually Koi, just like Fnatic, is another team where I think a lot of people, I don't know about others, but I feel like we've got a good read on this team, mate, because this team is exactly who I thought they are. They're not some like, oh my God, they should win the whole split. Like, actually, they do look like they're going to be like the top three, top 14. But like the problem I have with this team is I actually get the vibe of when Rogue would have dodgy games. You know, the worst thing about the old Rogue lineup when they had Odoamne was they would have certain games where it was like,
They did
dude, you got
nothing.
all, yeah, you got all, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Exactly. You have all these great players on paper, but it feels like there's no punch. You know what I mean? There's no power when you hit. It's like you're one of those boxes where no one has to fear putting their hands up because you can tap them all day long. You never knock someone out. So the problem I had was the Rogue at the end was looking really good. This looks like they've sort of regressed a little bit, mate. Like they weren't bad by any means. They've just got a bunch of good players, but like, what's the spark to this team? That's the problem, you know. And obviously, look, I'm not going to like tunnel on Shigenda just because he's the new person to join. But obviously, since it's his new team, I have to address that angle. And quite frankly, it didn't look very convincing in this first week. I mean, he got all the picks, I'm assuming he wanted, like all the carry picks, but it didn't look that great to me, mate.
Yeah, I think my issue with Sagenda is the third game. The third game that they played where he has a massive lead on Jax. Like, that's your game to carry. Like, you've been pathing topside. Malrong is just like essentially camping your lane, and you're just not able to like carry the game with Jax, which is such a strong pick. When you watch Photon's Jax game and then you watch Sagenda's Jax game, it feels like if you gave Photon Sagenda's lead, the game would be over. Like Photon would just take over the game. He would just have pressure inside. He would be able to find angles in team fights. But it felt like that game, like Wonder was just able to chill. Like Wonder was able to just be more useful than him in team fights. He was never able to find and engage when you have all these different angles to engage from with Jax. So to me, you have to have the whole package if you're going to play these types of carry picks. Like you can't just be good in lane and get a lead and then be playing it. Like you have to understand how to use that lead to make it unplayable for the enemy team in team fights. And I just didn't see that out of him. So I don't know. He's always been super hyped to me. People hyped him up when he joined LEC the first time. I mean, at this point, you know, he's in the third year of his career.
Yes.
And he's back in LEC. So I don't give him like the full, like he's not a rookie, right?
No,
he's somebody who's,
I don't think he should be.
Yeah, he's not considered a rookie to me. So when I see these types of mistakes, it's like there's something missing. Like he just doesn't understand how to use his lead when other people on his team aren't also ahead.
Yes. And I'll just throw this out there. Remember, this is an angle people are actually going to miss, is when you bring in a player like that, it also, because he's trying to play carry tops, you are fundamentally changing the way that fucking Koi/Rogue operates. Like, the best thing about an Odoamne or an Impact is it just streamlines your team. You know exactly which lanes you're going to play through, what they get. So the problem I have as well is this. It's like, isn't this in theory the era where you want like your fucking ADC popping off? Like, if this guy's just fucking throwing away top lane leads, how's that help? How's that going to help them win the old way they used to? Like, they used to win the game by Larsen's always up in CS and on a fucking mage. Comp just gets to a team fight. Maybe in the middle, there's some Malran crazy ganks, a few fucking, like, the odd game of Trimby on some weird side pick. But aside from that, you do win the game by fucking Comp cleaning up team fights. Like, they're not going to get to team fights with a player like this.
The sad thing for me is I feel like eventually when you have the new player coming in and they're not able to work on, or they're not immediately doing what you thought they would be good at, which is playing the carry top and then carrying team fights in a different way, you might revert to the way that you used to win. But then Sagenda will just be a worse version of Odoamne.
Yep.
So like that's the biggest issue that I see with Koi is if they start putting, you know, Sagenda on all the Odoamne champions. If they're just putting him on fucking Orin and Gnar and Renekton and they just play these types of champions and he's not actually, you know, you don't get any of the upside of having that player on your team. The whole advantage is that Sagenda is supposed to be better than Odo on the Fiora, on the Jax, and that these are champions that are, you know, they're playable in the meta. If you go watch other top laners around the world, the best top laners in the world are still able to play all these picks and they'll 1v9 games. I mean, Jax is probably the most broken that he's been in competitive for like 4 or 5 years. I mean, he's blindable. That's never been a thing. Jax used to be a situational counter pick, or maybe you could pick him 4 or 5 on red side if you had the bans in place where you could ban out the specific things that make his life miserable. It seems like you just play Jax into anything now. You don't care. Even really broken champions like Asante, you're willing to play Jax into. I don't know. There's something missing in his game. There's something missing in his game where when you watch him, it's like he doesn't know what to do to win the game on those picks. He knows how to get a lead. He knows how to lane. And then once you get into the mid game, he reminds me of Lorlo, honestly. This was Lorlo's problem when he joined TL back in like season 6, was that he was really insane in solo queue on the Fiora, like for the time, obviously. Sure. He was really insane on these split pushing champions because he would get massive leads in lane, but he just didn't know how that translated into like winning the whole game.
You know what I love about that?
But
this is why narratives are so fucked, because obviously the exact same week, Odoamne did actually look pretty good, but completely elo held on XL. And are you ready?
Aside from the Jax game, the Jax game was pretty bad.
No, that one was bad. But the joke is, it wouldn't have helped anyway if he'd have been in Koi, because spoiler, that used to happen to Odoamne in their team as well. If he ever got ahead on like Jason, Renekton, or Jax, you knew like there's no way this team's going to play around this and actually win the game. Like the question is just like, how did they fuck it up in the mid game? Like it's actually the same problem. The problem is this though. This is the bad part, like we're saying essentially, is this is the first choice way for this guy to play. The Odoamne one was always just more like, right, let's reward him for all those great weak side games by giving him the odd carry game. I'm with you. The big problem at the moment is just fundamentally, it seems like a mismatch. So bear in mind the rest of the team, like they've always been a team that could unfortunately, like I'll tell you the best way you describe a team like Koi, Dom, is, you know, people normally use it the other way, like they play up to the level of their opponents. Because I actually think Koi have some really good players. I think it's the opposite. I think they play down to the level of their opponents, if you know what I mean. Like, you ever put this team, even though they used to win so many regular season games, it's like you say, they were absolutely the team that even if they finished first, they would always have the random loss to a bottom 2 team. Like you say, like an Astralis loss for no reason whatsoever. Like that they're just not the team that fucking crush you, unfortunately, which is a bit underwhelming. Because in this group of teams, like, you're supposed to actually, this is supposed to be the split that's wide open. If you kept remember, they're the reigning champions, get 4 of the players together. Surely you're the team that hits the ground running and is great in week 1. Like, this is actually like a sort of a semi-dodgy week 1.
Yeah, definitely. When you compare them to the other teams, like G2 replaced how many players, right? They replaced 3 players on their team. Yep. You look at Vitality, they have a completely different lineup. The only player that remains is Perks, which is like, you have 5 new players playing together. How is Koi not immediately just better than these teams based off the fact that they kept 4 out of 5 and they were the champions? Like, I don't see why they fell off so hard. And all the games looked bad. It's not like we're just looking at it and, oh, they had one bad game here and there. Even the games they won, like none of the games felt good to watch. So there's something really missing. I mean, I think that Odoamne's importance to the team is really showing through now.
Absolutely. See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.